ゴッドブローとは女神の怒りと悲しみを乗せた必殺の拳。相手は死ぬ。
Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. It's time once again to guess that Banzuke. Maybe someday I'll get a bunch of people to chant it so we can have a background crowd like when they yell it in Wheel of Fortune. I don't know. Quick note before we get started. If you're a Yeats fan and wondered where this Basho's video was, the Yeats got struck down and a beam of footage is just not great quality, at least getting it from Twitch. Maybe someday they can happen again in a way that makes sense, but for now, the lack of Yeats at least gave me time to work on something pretty big. But that's for another day. Now it's Banzuke time! As always, we start with a picture of the full math. I'm gonna try something different this time though. As we go, we'll have the math stay on the screen alongside the changes, so it's easier to keep track of how everyone is moving. First, the Sanyaku. This is already largely lined up in its finished form. Teru no Fuji is on the top, Kotozakura is Tappozeki because he had the most wins of the group in May, Hou Shoryu is next, and Battle Hamster brings up the rear. Sekiwake has Abi, since he was a Sekiwake last time and held rank, Oo no Sato, who's forcing there to be a third Sekiwake slot thanks to his 12 wins at Komusubi, and then Kirishima, since demoted Ozeki go to the back of the Sekiwake line. Then Daisho and Hiradoumi move to the Komusubi rank because there simply aren't any other options. Math puts Meisei at Komusubi, but since there are already two guys there, he'll slide down to Maegashira 1 East. Just below the Sanyaku, there are a lot of open ranks, but also a lot of losing records. Still, we should be able to fill out the first few ranks relatively easily. Atami Fuji will go to 1 West. They're not going to bump Meisei back so Atami can hold position. Takayasu can't go higher than 3 East because of his losing record, but he's clearly the best option there. Gonoyama was 6 and 9, so he has to get demoted to some degree, and since Takayasu's at 3 East, he can go to 3 West. Now, who goes to Maegashira 2? Ura, Onosho, Tobizaru, and Oho all had losing records before that, so it can't be them. Wakamoto Haru is the only one being demoted from a high enough rank that he can slot in there, which means Mitakeyumi, as the next winning record in line, has to get spiked all the way up to the 2nd rank as well. Could Wakamoto Haru be pushed farther down? Yeah, but it would require Shona Naomi and probably Takanosho as well to be brought way up. They could put Waka ahead of Takayasu and Gonoyama, or behind, and either one would make sense if the committee does push them all back. But in those cases, Shona Naomi and Takanosho also end up ahead of Takayasu, who's miles ahead mathematically, and if you only put Shona Naomi up at M2, then there's a bigger split between him and Takanosho than I think is likely. With this many holes to fill at the top, Wakamoto Haru at Maegashira 2 seems the most likely outcome. I have Mitakeyumi at 2 East and Waka at 2 West because, with Waka being so under-demoted, it's probable they at least push him down as far as they can within that rank. But it's not impossible he goes to East and Mitakeyumi goes to West. And now we get to the fun part, ranks 4 through 7. Well, 4 through 6 since Koto Shouho and Sado Naomi are essentially locked in at rank 7. If we keep these guys as mathematically aligned as possible, Ura and Onosho remain at 4 West and 5 East respectively, which leaves a hole at 4 East. That gets filled by Tobizaru. A half-rank demotion on 6 and 9 is extremely small, but when there aren't any other options, it can happen. Oho, Shona Naomi, and Takanosho are all tied, but in this scenario, putting Oho at 5 West is the only thing that makes sense. Oho had the same record as Tobizaru at a half rank behind him, so they're not just going to drop Tobi a half rank, but drop Oho 2.5 behind Shona and Takanosho. This just looks super goofy. Likewise, they're not going to put Oho at 4 West, so he and Tobi get a half rank demotion on 6 and 9, but Ura and Onosho also get a half rank demotion on 7 and 8. Not a chance. Tobi and Oho are mathematically behind Ura and Onosho, so how can we set it up to at least maintain that? Well, if we leave Ura and Onosho in position since they're at the top of the pile, we get this. Shona Naomi fills the 4 East slot, Ura and Onosho hold rank, and Takanosho goes to 5 West. That's pretty reasonable. Tobizaru and Oho are forced to take demotions in line with their records, leaving Shona Naomi to fill the gap at 4 East, and Takanosho takes the next spot after Ura and Onosho. But they could also move Takanosho up to 4 West and bump the other two back. In this case, Ura, Onosho, Toby, and Oho all get exactly 1/2 rank less of a demotion than their records say they should, and Shona no Umi and Taka no Sho stay next to each other after being mathematically tied. There's a very nice symmetry to this method, which makes it a draw. Since Shona and Taka no Sho are a rank and a half behind Ura and a full rank behind Onosho, I think it's more likely they get split up on the basis that the committee says, well, we wouldn't have done it, but we had a gap to fill. There are a lot of possibilities, basically. If they decide this is a Banzuke where they want to be nice to the guys in the Joy who had to deal with all the Sanyaku matches, the minimum demotions for Toby and Oho make more sense. If they do move Shona no Umi up, but leave Ura at 4 West and Onosho at 5 East, we could see any combination of Toby, Oho, and Taka no Sho at 5 West and Maegashira 6. I truly do not have a suggestion here. If we think of a probable outcome as having more than a 50% chance of happening, I don't think any option is even close to that. Logic can set up the choices, but after that, this is just vibes. Once we get past Maegashira 7, things simplify considerably. Ryuden's in front of the next group, so he'll go to 8 East. Oshoma had a better record than Kinbozan and got chucked into a couple of Sanyaku matches, so he'll probably get that tiebreaker and move up next to Ryuden at 8 West, putting Kinbozan at 9 East. After that, everyone just shuffles upward. Ignore Waka, Endo, and Shio since they're coming up from Juryo. Tamawashi, Shodai, Ichi, Midori, and Nishikigi all get to take one step up, which gives us 9 West, 10, and 11. Chura no Umi and Hokuto Fuji tied, but given recent trends, it's more likely Chura gets bumped up to 12 East and the captain takes the full rank demotion to 12 West. Then we get the next real question. Does Asanoyama go ahead of or behind Takara Fuji? Is it possible Asanoyama could land above rank 13? Yeah, but I think it's pretty unlikely. There hasn't been a lot of grace shown to injured wrestlers recently, and bumping Asanoyama up means, if nothing else, Hokuto Fuji gets over-demoted. The committee's been a lot more willing to over-demote guys lately, but I don't think it's happening to be nice to someone who missed the Basho. So, since Takara Fuji gets a full promotion at 13 West, do they leave him with that and move Asanoyama ahead of him, or push him up to 13 East and leave Asanoyama at the back of this particular line? Not that long ago, Asanoyama to 13 East would have felt like a given. Now it's pretty 50-50. For Guess the Banzuke purposes, if this is where they land, you get at least 1 point for each of them, so it's not as major of a choice. If you're really not sure, flip a coin. It could genuinely go either way. Now we line up the Juryos. I'm treating it as probable that they all end up behind the Maegashira guys, except Roga, because they can only move up one without screwing over Takara Fuji, and I don't think they'll do that. Theoretically, they could do like Takara Fuji, then Waka, then Asanoyama, but considering Waka, Endo, and Shio were all clumped together, I don't think that'll happen. So we put them in order, and Roga takes his regular demotion to 16 West. When the Juryo wrestlers calculate ahead of someone who is in Maegashira, lately they've had no hesitation in keeping the Maegashira guys behind. This is the part of the Banzuke where they can make some goofy decisions, but this here is a safe default setup. And of course we need a 17 East. Some people have asked whether Takeru Fuji might end up there or why he won't, so I'll explain that as well. First, for that last Maegashira spot, Nishiki Fuji and Onokatsu are tied. Onokatsu had a hell of a basho, but he was so far down that he didn't quite get out of Juryo mathematically, and moving Nishiki Fuji up is just a half rank under demotion. This might be a little anticlimactic, but it's almost assuredly going to be Nishiki Fuji. A bigger question, in fact, is whether Onokatsu will go to Juryo 1 East or get shifted to West while Toki Hayate goes to East. It doesn't really matter that much, so I'm leaving him in order, but it wouldn't be shocking to see Toki get bumped up since he was in Makuuchi last basho. As for Takeru Fuji, the issue comes down to math first, relative order second. The first step in figuring out the Banzuke is the math. From there, even though sometimes there are complicated decisions because certain guys can't go above or below a certain rank, by and large, the system keeps them in the order the math places them. Under and over promotions and demotions are determined largely by how many guys land in front of someone and how many end up behind. This is especially true when it comes to deciding who's in one division or another. It's pretty much always the top 42 guys who end up in Makuuchi. There's a serious salary disparity between the divisions, so the committee putting their collective thumb on the scale would be very noticeable and possibly not go over real well. In this case, even just favoring Onokatsu over Nishiki Fuji would probably be shocking for the pay reason if nothing else. So with that in mind, dragging Takeru Fuji all the way up from Juryo 4 West, 3.5 ranks behind Nishiki Fuji and Onokatsu is way more favoritism than the committee is going to show. Plus, going to Juryo isn't necessarily bad. Okay, it's less money, but for a guy like Takeru Fuji, Juryo is a rehab assignment. I imagine they'll put him at Juryo 2, probably East, since he was in Makuuchi and Daiamami wasn't, and all he needs is 9 wins to make it back up. Given how dominant he can be, that gives him a lot of room to minimize the risk of aggravating his ankle. If someone's putting up a good fight and has him moving back, he can just step out rather than pressure the ankle, and it's not likely to matter much. More than 10 wins probably won't make much difference to where he lands in Makuuchi. So Takeru Fuji is going to Juryo, there's really no two ways about it. Sorry Takeru fans, hopefully you'll get to see him back in the top division in September. And that's Guess the Banzuke for Nagoya 2024. What do you think of our setup? As always, feel free to leave a comment and make sure to play Guess the Banzuke. The link to enter, as well as the link to Chiyo Tsuke's incredible helper program that we use for these videos, will be in the description. Also, it's become more and more frequent that commenters leave questions on videos. I love it and I enjoy answering questions as much as possible. However, as this video goes up, I'll be on my way to Iowa to judge a Muay Thai tournament for the next several days. I won't be back until Sunday night, realistically Monday, so I'm not going to get much chance to answer any questions. However, what I will do is take any comments with questions or which otherwise deserve a response and make a video answering those comments when I get back. With some questions, I'm sure a lot of people wonder the same thing, and this might be a better way to spread information. Plus, I'm just kind of curious how it'll go. So if you have any questions about this Banzuke, Banzukes in general, Sumo in general, anything, this is the time to leave a comment. It'll also help if you like the video so the algorithm will show it to more people and hopefully get more comments and more views and more comments and YouTube! That's all for now, have a great weekend, and I'll see you when I get back.